October 1942, Stalag Luft III, deep in Nazi-occupied Poland. Flight Lieutenant Clayton Hutton sits in a freezing barracks, staring at a Red Cross package. Inside, cigarettes, chocolate, canned food. Standard issue for British POWs. But Hutton isn't looking at supplies, he's looking at tools. Because hidden inside those cigarette packs, sewn into the chocolate bars and tucked into the canned goods are the components of an escape kit. A compass made from cigarette foil and razor blades. A map printed on silk hidden inside a playing card. A file disguised as a shoelace. And Hutton knows this because he designed them. This is the story of one of World War II's most ingenious escape tools, the cigarette compass, and the British intelligence officer who turned ordinary Red Cross packages into covert escape kits that helped hundreds of POWs break free from Nazi prisons. It's a story of innovation, desperation, and one man's determination to give captured airmen a fighting chance. But first, we need to understand why something as simple as a compass could mean the difference between freedom and death.
Let's start with the problem. By 1942, Nazi Germany held thousands of Allied POWs in camps across occupied Europe. These weren't ordinary prisons. They were purpose-built fortresses designed to be escape-proof. Stalag Luft III, the most famous, housed primarily RAF and American airmen. High barbed wire fences, guard towers with searchlights, regular patrols, random inspections, and a location deliberately chosen to make escape nearly impossible. Deep in Poland, hundreds of miles from neutral territory. The prisoners who arrived at these camps faced a grim reality. Even if you somehow got out of the camp, where would you go? Switzerland was over 400 miles southwest. Sweden was even further north. Both required crossing Nazi-occupied territory, avoiding patrols, speaking German or convincing locals to help, and finding food and shelter. And most crucially, you needed to know which direction to walk. Without navigation, an escapee would wander in circles until recaptured or shot.
That's where Clayton Hutton enters the story. Hutton was officially listed as a technical officer in British intelligence, but his real job was far more interesting. He was MI9's chief gadget maker. MI9 was a secret British organization tasked with helping POWs escape. While MI6 ran spies and MI5 caught enemy agents, MI9 focused on one mission: get our boys home. Hutton's workshop in London was like something from a spy novel. He designed escape tools disguised as everyday items. Maps printed on silk that could be hidden in clothing seams. Hacksaws hidden inside shoe heels. Files disguised as pencils. But his most famous invention, the one that helped the most escapees, was deceptively simple. A compass, small enough to hide anywhere, made from materials so ordinary that guards would never suspect. The cigarette compass, or more accurately, the compass hidden inside cigarette packaging. Let me explain how it worked, because the engineering is brilliant.
A standard compass needs three things: a magnetized needle, a pivot point, and a way to indicate direction. Hutton's design achieved all three using materials available in any POW camp. The needle, a razor blade sliver, sharpened and magnetized. The pivot, a tiny brass cup, small enough to hide under a fingernail. The housing, cigarette foil, shaped into a circular case. The directional marker, a tiny dot of luminous paint on the north-pointing end. The entire compass measured less than ½ an inch in diameter, small enough to hide in a button, a pipe stem, a fountain pen cap, or sewn into a uniform collar. And here's the genius part. Each component could be sent separately, disguised as something else entirely. The razor blade arrived in shaving kits. The brass cup came as part of a broken fountain pen. The foil was already in cigarette packages. The luminous paint was hidden inside toothpaste tubes. The prisoners had to assemble the compasses themselves. MI9 couldn't risk sending complete compasses. The Germans inspected everything, but they couldn't inspect prisoners' ingenuity.
Hutton didn't just design the compass, he created an entire covert supply chain. British intelligence worked with the Red Cross, various charities, and even game manufacturers to send innocent packages to POW camps. These packages contained hidden compartments, false bottoms, and cleverly disguised escape aids. A Monopoly board might contain a compass hidden in the dice, maps printed under the game board, and German currency tucked into the property cards. A tin of cocoa powder could have a false bottom with a compass underneath. A deck of cards, when soaked in water, would separate into layers, revealing a detailed escape map. Even books were hollowed out, pages glued together to create hidden compartments. The Germans knew something was happening. They knew prisoners were attempting escapes with tools they shouldn't have. They inspected packages more thoroughly, X-rayed suspicious items, and interrogated prisoners about their supplies. But they couldn't catch everything. The volume was too great, and Hutton's disguises were too clever.
Let's focus on one specific escape where the cigarette compass made all the difference. March 1944, Stalag Luft III. The Great Escape. Yes, the one from the famous movie, though the film took liberties with the truth. 76 men escaped through a 336-foot tunnel dubbed Harry. Most were recaptured within days. 50 were executed by the Gestapo on Hitler's orders. But 3 made it home. 2 Norwegians who reached Sweden, and 1 Dutchman who made it to Gibraltar. All 3 used cigarette compasses. Without them, they would have had no way to maintain direction through hundreds of miles of enemy territory. The compasses were crude compared to military equipment, they weren't perfectly accurate, and they were difficult to read in darkness. But they worked. They pointed north, and that was enough. One of the successful escapees, Jens Mueller, later described using his compass during the escape. "We traveled only at night, using the stars when we could see them, the compass when we couldn't. The compass was tiny, barely visible, but I checked it every hour. It kept us heading north toward the Baltic. Without it, we would have wandered east into Germany or west, deeper into Poland. Either way, recapture. That little cigarette compass saved our lives."
But the cigarette compass wasn't Hutton's only innovation. He was constantly improving, adapting, responding to German countermeasures. When Germans started X-raying packages, Hutton designed compasses with no metal parts, magnetized slivers of steel wire so thin they didn't show up on X-rays. When Germans started soaking packages in water to reveal hidden maps, Hutton switched to waterproof inks and materials that wouldn't separate when wet. He even designed compasses disguised as uniform buttons. British POW uniforms had standard brass buttons. Hutton created identical-looking buttons with tiny compasses built inside. The face of the button would unscrew to reveal the compass underneath. Thousands of these were manufactured and sewn onto uniforms before prisoners were sent to camps. The Germans never caught on. They assumed the buttons were standard issue. There were also collar stud compasses, cufflink compasses, even compasses hidden in pipes. Hutton's philosophy was simple. If a prisoner could keep it through inspection, it could hide a compass.
The psychological impact of these tools was as important as their practical use. Knowing you had a compass, maps, and tools meant you could plan. Even if you never attempted escape, knowing you could gave prisoners hope. And hope was the difference between surviving captivity and giving up. Many prisoners never used their compasses. They held on to them as insurance, as a connection to home, as proof that someone back in England was thinking about them, working to help them. The compasses became talismans. Some prisoners carried their cigarette compasses through years of captivity, through transfers between camps, through interrogations and inspections. They never escaped, but they never surrendered the compass either. One RAF officer, after liberation, was asked why he'd kept his compass hidden for 3 years without using it. He replied, "Because as long as I had it, I had options. The Germans could control my body, but they couldn't control my mind. That compass meant I could leave any time I chose. Even if I never did, knowing I could made all the difference."
Hutton's work wasn't limited to compasses. He designed an entire arsenal of escape aids. Silk maps that could be folded into a matchbox and hidden anywhere. These maps were printed with incredible detail: roads, railways, forests, rivers, safe houses. even German and local police station locations marked. Prisoners could sew them into jacket linings, hide them in shoe insoles, or fold them inside hollowed-out book spines. He created miniature saws disguised as shoelaces. The laces had tiny saw teeth woven into the fibers. Pull the lace taut and draw it back and forth across metal bars, and it would slowly cut through. He designed a concentrated food ration called fudge, a dense, high-calorie mixture of chocolate, sugar, and vitamins that could sustain a man for days and could be hidden in small spaces. There were lockpicking kits disguised as pencils, wire cutters hidden in combs, and even forged German documents sent through coded letters from fake family members back home.
But creating the tools was only half the battle. Getting them into prisoners' hands was equally challenging. The Germans censored all mail, inspected all packages, and interrogated prisoners about anything suspicious. MI9 developed elaborate coding systems to communicate with prisoners without the Germans catching on. Coded letters from fictional relatives would contain instructions. Uncle James sends his regards and hopes you enjoy the new pipe he sent. Translation: there's a compass in the pipe stem. Mother says to use the new playing cards carefully. Translation: soak the cards in water to reveal the maps. The most famous code was the dot code. Tiny pinpricks under specific letters in innocent-looking letters would spell out messages. The Germans eventually discovered this, so MI9 switched to invisible inks, microdots, and even messages encoded in the pattern of stamps on envelopes.
Not every escape attempt succeeded, obviously. Many were caught within hours, their compasses confiscated, their maps found. The Germans became better at detecting escape aids as the war progressed. They developed more sophisticated inspection techniques, used metal detectors, and even employed POWs as informants, prisoners who would report escape plans in exchange for better treatment. But the failures didn't stop the attempts. Between 1940 and 1945, Allied POWs made over 5,000 documented escape attempts from German camps. Most failed. Some ended in death, shot while escaping, or executed after recapture. But hundreds succeeded. Prisoners made it to neutral countries, rejoined Allied forces, and returned to the war. The exact number who succeeded using Hutton's tools is impossible to determine. Many successful escapees never reported which specific aids they'd used. Security protocols meant details weren't always recorded, but post-war debriefings make clear the MI9 cigarette compass was among the most valuable tools MI9 provided.
Let me tell you about one more escape where the compass played a crucial role. August 1943, Stalag Luft III in Lithuania. Squadron leader Bertram "Jimmy" James had already escaped and been recaptured 3 times. He was in the cooler, solitary confinement for persistent escapers when he received a package from the Red Cross. Inside, cigarettes, chocolate, and a book. The cigarette pack had a compass hidden in the foil lining. The book had a silk map sewn into the spine. The chocolate bar had a tiny saw blade wrapped in wax paper alongside it. James spent weeks planning, waiting for the right moment. When it came, a guard rotation change that left a brief gap in surveillance, he cut through the cooler's window bars with the saw, used the compass to navigate to a nearby forest, and began the 400-mile journey to Sweden. He traveled only at night, checking the compass constantly, eating the chocolate ration sparingly. After 11 days of walking, hiding, and narrowly avoiding German patrols, he reached the Swedish border and freedom.
After the war, Clayton Hutton's work was declassified, and he became something of a celebrity. He wrote a book, Official Secret, detailing his inventions and the escape attempts they enabled. The book had to be carefully edited. Even in 1960s, some techniques were still classified, but enough was revealed to show the scope of his contribution. Hutton estimated that his escape aids helped over 30,000 Allied servicemen either escape captivity or evade capture in the first place. That number includes not just POWs, but also downed airmen who used Hutton's tools to avoid capture and reach Allied lines. The cigarette compass alone was produced in quantities exceeding 100,000 units. They were distributed not just through Red Cross packages, but sewn into uniforms, built into equipment, and carried by air crews on bombing missions. Pilots flying over occupied Europe knew that if they were shot down, they had a compass hidden in their uniform. That knowledge gave them confidence. It meant capture wasn't the end, just a temporary setback.
The psychological warfare aspect was significant too. Every time a prisoner escaped using MI9 tools, it forced Germany to divert resources, troops to search, bureaucrats to investigate, security to tighten. The escapes themselves rarely changed the war's outcome, but the resources Germany spent preventing and responding to them did. Thousands of guards, tons of materials for fences and barriers, countless man-hours inspecting packages and interrogating prisoners, all diverted from the actual fighting.
Hutton's legacy extends beyond World War II. His techniques influenced modern survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, or SEER, training. Military pilots and special forces today still learn methods derived from Hutton's innovations. The concept of hiding tools in plain sight, using everyday items as weapons or escape aids, and maintaining operational security through covert communication, all trace back to MI9 and Hutton's workshop. Modern survival compasses for military personnel are direct descendants of Hutton's cigarette compass design. They're more sophisticated now, better materials, more accurate magnetization, luminous markings that last longer, but the core concept remains: a small, concealable compass that can mean the difference between survival and death. The cigarette compass itself became a museum piece. Examples are displayed at the Imperial War Museum in London, the RAF Museum, and various military collections. They look almost laughably simple, tiny discs of foil and metal that seem too crude to be useful, but they worked, and they saved lives.
There's a broader lesson here about innovation under constraint. Hutton couldn't give prisoners military-grade equipment. The Germans would confiscate anything obviously useful. So he had to be creative. He had to think like both an engineer and a magician, creating tools that worked while making them appear to be nothing special. This kind of thinking, constrained innovation, drives some of humanity's best inventions. When you can't use the obvious solution, you find creative alternatives. When resources are limited, you maximize what you have. When the enemy is watching, you hide in plain sight. The cigarette compass exemplifies this perfectly, a sophisticated navigation tool built from trash. And it reminds us that wars aren't won just by guns and bombs. They're won by intelligence, ingenuity, and the determination of people who refuse to accept defeat. Clayton Hutton never fought on a battlefield. He never flew a bomber or fired a weapon. But his contribution to victory was real and measurable. He gave prisoners hope, tools, and a chance. And for thousands of Allied servicemen, that made all the difference.
So when we think about the POW who used cigarettes to build a compass and escape a Nazi prison, we're really thinking about a system. A network of intelligence officers, manufacturers, couriers, and prisoners working together against a common enemy. The cigarette compass wasn't just one man's invention. It was the result of collaboration, of shared determination, of refusing to give up even when captured. The prisoners who used these compasses were heroes, but so was the man who designed them. Clayton Hutton died in 1965, largely forgotten by the public despite his wartime service. His obituary in the Times was brief, mentioning his technical work during the war, but providing no details. Even in death, some secrets remained classified. But the men he helped, those who made it home because of a tiny compass hidden in cigarette foil, they remembered. They told their children and grandchildren, "A man in London I never met saved my life by thinking of everything. Even cigarettes became tools in his hands."
Today, you can still find examples of Hutton's compasses in antique shops and military memorabilia auctions. They're collector's items now, pieces of history that command impressive prices. But their real value isn't monetary. It's in the stories they represent. Stories of ingenuity, courage, and the unbreakable human spirit. Every cigarette compass represents a prisoner who hoped for freedom, an intelligence officer who worked tirelessly to provide it, a network of people who risked everything to help, and in some cases, a successful escape that ended in freedom rather than recapture or death. These tiny instruments of navigation were also instruments of hope, and in war,
Hope is sometimes the most powerful weapon of all. The next time you see a cigarette package or a simple compass, think about Clayton Hutton and the thousands of Allied POWs who turned ordinary objects into extraordinary tools. Think about what human ingenuity can accomplish when lives are on the line. And remember that sometimes the smallest things, a sliver of magnetized metal, a disc of cigarette foil, can change history.
Thanks for watching. This story shows that wars are fought not just on battlefields, but in workshops, prison camps, and even cigarette packages. What do you think? Could you have designed something this ingenious? Could you have used it to escape? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know if you'd heard about MI9 and their escape tools before. And if you're fascinated by hidden history and incredible true stories like this, hit that like button and subscribe. We've got more untold stories from World War II coming your way. See you in the next one.